Hey, what's going on? My name is Vit, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the current state of all the jobs in Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. It's been about a week now since the launch of Early Access, and we've been able to get our hands on these jobs and play them in the Extreme Trials. These are the only fights that show up on FFLogs. What we're looking at, FFLogs.com, is the website with all of this data that people parse from the fights and upload. And as you can see, a lot of people have been playing the game. You can see all the numbers down here on the right-hand side. Viper has 35,000 parses already. Some of these jobs, have less. Black Mage being the least played job right now. Viper being the most played, followed by Picto. Who could have guessed? But we're going to take a look at some of this data. I'm also going to show you how to analyze this data yourself, so you can do this throughout the expansion and, see where all the jobs are at whenever you want. You can always come to this website. Right now, we're looking at the trials because that is the only thing available at the moment. When the normal raids are released, the data for those will show up as well. But right now, if you click on trials in the navigation, come down to statistics, you can look at all of this data. Right here, this category is the average between the two fights. But if you come down to either trial 1 or trial 2, these are question marks for spoilers right now. I don't know that anybody who would be here would be worried about these spoilers, but yeah, you can look at, the statistics for either fight or the average between the two. Right now we're looking at the average. So there's a lot of different things here. There's 4 different types of DPS to look at, and then you can sort it different ways as well. Let's take a look at the past week. We're looking at all percentiles, which you can sort by different percentiles. A lot of the time, I think the 90th percentile is probably somewhere good to be looking, because that's like the top 10% of players, right? So in my eyes, that's like when you really know your job, you can hit that. You might still be missing something here or there. You might not be playing absolutely perfectly. There's probably still some optimizations. You might not have gotten lucky with all your critical hits. Obviously, that's not going to make up 10% difference. But, if you're hitting that 90%, you're playing your job pretty much correctly. Obviously, you can look at higher percentiles as well. Maybe it's more accurate to look at 95 to really see like how the jobs should be played, which is funny because as you can see, spoiler, Pictomancer's doing very well at the top end when it's played correctly compared to the other jobs. As we get to that like maximum DPS, Pictomancer is insane. Right now, this is sorted by score, which honestly, I don't even know how that's evaluated, but you can change it here to per second amounts, so it shows the actual DPS numbers. And as you can see, Pictomancer's maximum damage, it's not the true maximum because it is, again, an average between the two fights, EX1 and EX2, but it's doing about 25,000. Reaper is doing 23,449. So over 1,500 DPS less than Pictomancer. Again, we're looking at different categories of DPS, so I guess I should explain those. Right now, we're on our DPS, which is factoring in your raid buffs. So jobs that have a raid buff get a bit of a boost here because it adds the party's damage that went into your buff, basically. So if you're playing your buffs at the right time, and if your party's playing well into those buffs, you get a boost here. Alternatively, there's a DPS, which is basically the opposite. It's how well you played into the party's buffs. So jobs that are selfish DPS, like Samurai and Viper, with no party buff, will look better here. Apparently Picto too, even though they're an our DPS job, they have a 5% raid buff, and, they're still doing more damage than anything. Again, we're looking at the maximum possible. We've got NDPS, which I believe is normalized DPS, maybe? I'm not entirely sure on the terminology there. But this is essentially your own personal damage, ignoring party buffs completely. So it's basically like, how well did you push your buttons? This is not a great metric to look at for what we're doing, where we're comparing all of the jobs against one another. This is more for like, how well did I actually play on this specific fight, you know, this specific run we did. We're not going to look at this right now. This is a bit more niche. But alternative to that, you have C DPS, which I believe is combined DPS, which is combined A DPS and R DPS. So it's really factoring in everything in this category, and it gives you a much more broad look at just how the jobs are doing. So this is good when you're comparing jobs against each other and how they actually work in a party. So we'll probably be looking at C DPS a lot. I may talk about A DPS and R DPS as well. Right now we're just looking at the DPS, the role themselves, but we can look at tanks and healers as well. We'll do all of that. I'll go through all of the different roles, including melee, caster, ranged, tanks, and healers. But the first thing that you'll notice is that Pictomancer is absolutely broken right now. When you compare it to the other casters, we've got Black Mage down here, we've got Red Mage below that, and Summoner right below it. So I don't know why Picto's all the way at the top, but if you're playing caster and you're not playing Picto, I don't know what you're doing. There can be an argument to bring Red Mage, but at the expense of Picto's damage, I don't know. It's funny because when you're progging a new fight, a lot of the time the argument was, do we bring Black Mage for the damage, or do we bring Red Mage for the reses, or do we bring Summoner for like a mix of both? But right now it's like Red Mage and Black Mage are close enough that like that's not really an argument. It's just, do I bring Red Mage for the res, or do I bring Picto because it's doing how much more damage? 23.6 versus 27.6? It's doing 4k more DPS. Again, this is the maximum possible, the maximum recorded damage that has been done over both extremes on average. Again, you can sort by either fight. I think the first trial is a little worse for casters because there's a lot of movement. So if we look at that, Picto might be slightly lower. If we look at the maximum, I mean, it's still top. If you look at 95th percentile, it's still top damage. So when it's played well, it is doing more damage than any of the other jobs at the moment. If you start dropping down a bit into like the 90th percentile, some of the melee beat it out, but you know, I don't know. It's still neck and neck with Viper Samurai, which are meant to be, you know, pure damage. And Pictomancer has a raid buff, and you know, it just makes no sense why Pictomancer is where it is. I can absolutely see a nerf coming for that, but who knows? Maybe they buff a bunch of other stuff as well. It seems like the easy solution just to bring Pictomancer down here with Red Mage, maybe just above Red Mage. If we look at the maximums again, it's Black Mage, then Red Mage. So I don't know, maybe bring it under Black Mage, above Red Mage. That's where everybody kind of thought it would live, but not at the very top. So who knows? It's fun while it lasts. Again, this video is just for fun. We're just seeing where things are currently standing because it's interesting to me, I think. And, you know, you can play whatever you want. If you want to play Black Mage, go for it. If you want to play Summoner, you should be able to. I don't know. I haven't heard great things about new Summoner. I've heard that some of the new animations are a little lackluster, maybe, and it's not quite as exciting. And Pictomancer's definitely exciting. So that's kind of the only case where I would be considering swapping jobs. For me, I was kind of between Dragoon and Ninja, and seeing that, I guess we'll talk about the melee now. Ninja is the lowest of all the melee. Let's just look at all percentiles to get a more broad range, I guess. Here again, you can see Picto's maximum, these little dots on the right. Picto is still the highest maximum, but this is kind of looking at more of like a broad all percentile range. This line in the middle being the median. So yeah, I don't know. Ninja's kind of at the bottom of the melee. I could see Ninja getting a little buff. It does have a 5% party buff, and it has some hard-hitting moves. So I don't know why it's as low as it is. I've been playing Ninja myself. It's, you know, as busy as ever, and takes more work than Reaper, that's for sure. But Reaper's blasting. So yeah, I don't know. Right now, if let's go back to you know, higher percentile stuff. We're looking at 99 here, and Monk's doing pretty well. Like the melee have always kind of been a toss-up. We're just looking at Trial 1 here as well. Again, Trial 1 has more movement. If we look at Trial 2, which from my understanding, again, I've yet to do these. The plan is to do them on stream this weekend, so if you want to check that out, there will be a link to my Twitch stream below. But there's more movement in Trial 2, so the jobs that, you know, there's more movement in Trial 1, excuse me. So Pictomancer, if it can plant, it's going to do even more damage. And other jobs like Samurai, which has cast times, you know, it's able to squeak out a bit more damage than Viper. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. The melee are seemingly in a good spot. It just seems like Ninja could boost up maybe a little bit. We're looking at the range of 2 weeks here again. I don't know why. This is more accurate. 1 week maximum. Again, the maximum is kind of iffy. So if we look at the 90th percentile, like maximum takes so much work. It takes a full dedicated party trying to do the maximum damage. Like you've got to get lucky with your critical hits. It's a lot of work to get that maximum. You've got to play like absolutely perfectly and, you know, find every little optimization that is like seems crazy to normal play. Like you're not using the normal rotations doing that type of stuff. Like it's a lot of work to get that maximum. So again, 90 percentile is probably more in the realm of just like playing your job really well, in my opinion. That last 10% is a lot to work for. But if we look at the melee on fight number 2, Reaper, Samurai, Viper, it's funny that Reaper is, you know, up above Samurai and Viper even, because I don't know. It just doesn't naturally come across as like the biggest damage job. Like you'd think that would be Samurai, and then Viper is going for that same thing, but Reaper's doing crazy right now. Reaper seems to be in a really good spot, and when you look at Dragoon, the other maiming job, these two share gear sets, Dragoon's doing 22k, Reaper's at 22.5, 22.6, so 600 DPS difference. An easier job, and it has a personal mitigation with its shield with a heal. It's very tempting to play some Reaper for me, but I'm just not a huge fan of how Reaper plays, the aesthetic, and so on. So I like Dragoon, so I'm probably going to stick with it for now. Maybe I play some Viper, maybe I play some Samurai, I don't know. But, you know, this damage difference really isn't a big enough difference that, like, you're not going to be able to clear the fight or anything unless the DPS checks are just broken. Like, if it's not balanced and you actually need that extra damage, then sure, that's one thing. But right now, to, like, clear the extremes, you know, you don't have to be thinking about this. Like, play Dragoon Ninja if you want. Like, it's fine. You could bring Dragoon Ninja, Summoner, Dancer, and probably do just fine. Like, it's not ideal, but, yeah, again, this is just more interesting than anything to me. Don't let this dictate what job you play, because again, I'm going to be playing the second lowest melee. So it is what it is. Would it be cool if Dragoon was on top? Sure. But it's not, so it is what it is. Let's look at fight 1 again as well. And yeah, Dragoon's in the same spot. Ninja's maybe even doing slightly worse. Yeah, it's like a 400 DPS difference between the next melee up. So, yeah, I don't know. Take this all with a grain of salt, but it is, you know, it is telling of how the jobs are performing, that we do have enough data that shows that this is how it works. And again, we're looking at top percentiles, top 10% right now. So we already talked about the melee. We talked about the casters. Again, I have not played all of these jobs, so I don't know the intricacies of why exactly every job is doing how they are. But, you know, the damage numbers typically speak for themselves, especially at those upper percentiles. So the Fizz ranged is the last thing to look at. Bard and Machinist are fairly close to one another. I have to sort this by per second again. Bard doing more than Summoner on fight number... What are we looking at? Fight 1? No, we're looking at average between both fights right now. Over the past week, 90th percentile. So Bard is more valuable than Summoner at the moment, seemingly. So that's something. That's not traditionally how it goes for Fizz ranged versus caster, especially when you have a caster doing more than every other job in the game. So I could see Summoner getting some buffs. Machinist is holding its own. Dancer's at the bottom. Between Dancer and Bard, it's 19,700 to 20,200. So what's that? A 500 DPS difference, 450, I think. I don't know. That's fairly significant. Bard is also maybe a little less swingy than Dancer. Dancer has more RNG. I haven't played the new Dancer or Bard for that matter, so I don't know. Machinist has some good utility with Dismantle, so by no means is Machinist bad. By no means is Dancer bad. If you've got a Pictomancer, maybe you dance partner them and it's even crazier, and who knows? I don't know all the tech. We're still only 1 week in, so maybe there's some crazy stuff that Dancer can do. I'm really not sure, but right now, for the DPS, it's looking like Bard, Picto, Reaper. Reaper's looking really solid. And then kind of a toss-up between Samurai, Viper. So if you were to have a party comp, you would have those 4. Picto, Reaper, Bard, and then either Samurai or Viper, probably. That would be a very, very solid DPS comp, in my opinion. Again, you can bring any mix of these jobs and do just fine, but week 1, an optimal situation looks like that, I guess. So let's take a look over at the tanks now. So the tanks are a little different how this works with the different types of DPS. Typically tanks look at a DPS because they want to see, none of these have a party buff, right? So they want to see how much damage they're doing into the party's buffs. So that's what a DPS is, and typically the most accurate thing in how tanks are kind of assessed. And right now it seems like it's Gunbreaker doing the most damage, Warrior second in line, followed by Dark Knight, and then Paladin. This is interesting. I feel like Gunbreaker is probably where it should be, maybe. Like, if this is the baseline, like, if Gunbreaker is correct, what does the rest of the list look like? I feel like Warrior is where it should be, below Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker is like a very solid, very well-rounded tank right now. From my understanding, I have not leveled this one yet. I have leveled Dark Knight. That's the only one I've gotten to so far. But Gunbreaker is apparently slightly less clunky than it used to be, slightly less strict. You don't have to weave in your gap closers for damage anymore. So that frees up some space for mitigation, which is very nice during your burst. And, you know, it's just got good mitigation, good utility. I think Gunbreaker's good to be like a good damaging tank. So we'll take that as like the baseline. Let's assume Gunbreaker is where it should be. Warrior, I feel like it should be slightly below on damage because it has slightly better utility, probably. Holmgang alone, having a shorter cooldown, is super valuable when you're progging fights. Obviously, all of its healing, all the healing alone makes me say Warrior should be the lowest damaging tank. Just because it can like survive anything. I don't know why it can do all that, and it does more damage than the other tanks as well. So I don't know. Warrior is fine to be, what is it? 400 DPS below Gunbreaker, 350, whatever it is. So let's say those two are in a good spot. I don't know where, or I don't know why Dark Knight is as low as it is. It's doing 14.4 right now. Again, we're looking at both bosses. So in my opinion, Dark Knight should be doing the most damage because it has the least healing, and the mitigation is, I don't know, maybe more specific than Gunbreaker's. It's still really good mitigation, especially in 8-player content. In a dungeon, Dark Knight struggles way more than the other two. Dark Knight is tanking on hard mode compared to all of the other tanks when it comes to dungeons. But I don't know, we're not really talking about dungeons right now, but I don't know. All that considered, I think Dark Knight should be doing the most damage, but it's below Warrior, which has way better utility, in my opinion, than Dark Knight. So I feel like Dark Knight needs a buff. I feel like Paladin needs a buff as well. I feel like Paladin should be either on par with Warrior or just slightly above it. So I would take these two up and like move them up a bit. Dark Knight to the top, Paladin above Warrior. Maybe Paladin with Warrior on the same level. I'm not sure. I don't know. This is how the tanks currently are. I don't play tank too much, just for fun and for like roulettes and stuff a lot. Maybe I'll try the extreme on Dark Knight, see how it goes, but it's not geared, so it'll be a little bit of time until that happens. But yeah, I don't know. This is it for the tanks right now. Gunbreaker is looking really strong. It's looking like Gunbreaker Warrior is the ideal tank party comp at the moment. So let's take a look at the healers next. And the healers, you really do want to look at multiple of the different categories of DPS types. Our DPS considering the party buffs for Astro and Scholar, as well as a DPS for the pure damage of Sage and White Mage. Again, we can look at CDPS, which is a combination of both. And at the 90th percentile, it's looking like this. Astro is seemingly doing a lot of damage in a party that can take advantage of its buffs. And it seems like Sage is doing a lot of pure damage on its own. If we look at ADPS, it's pumping. 11,200. White Mage is at 11,000. 11,250 actually. Obviously, Astro is going to have lower personal DPS, but its R DPS is higher, meaning, you know, it puts out a lot of buffs with its cards, with div, with, you know, everything else. So if you look at the combined, again, we're at 90 percentile. I think if you go up to the max, Scholar is doing a little better. That tells me it's hard to play Scholar well. You really need to be in an optimized group to take full advantage of it. But Chain Strat on Scholar is super good. And if you're in like a top of the line, like super high end hardcore raid group, Astro Scholar can be incredible just to get 2 raid buffs that you might not have otherwise if you were to have Sage White Mage. So I don't know. Again, typically people want a pure healer and a barrier healer. We've seen in the past it's perfectly doable to get by with 2 shield healers as well. So Scholar Sage might be really good. It's typically a big struggle if you don't have a barrier healer. So you would probably never really want to go Astro White Mage. But yeah, I don't know. If we're looking at like the top 5 percentile, it seems like it's maybe a little more difficult to eke out that bit of damage on the top end with Scholar. You probably really need a fully optimized party comp to get the most value out of Scholar possible. Whereas Sage, it's probably a lot more reliable to get good damage and good value out of Sage. Because, again, you're not relying on your entire party. But it seems like Astro is just doing really well as far as damage goes. Obviously with healers, damage isn't everything. You have to heal. So a lot of this relies on their utility as well. White Mage is kind of, you know, I haven't talked about White Mage yet, and it's just all reliable. You can't go wrong with White Mage. It is flat out easier to play White Mage than it is Astro. So You have to look at ease of use as well when it comes to some of this stuff. Like if we're looking at lower percentile, 30 percentile, I don't know, Astro's still doing better. So maybe that's not a good argument, but it is flat out easier to heal on White Mage than it is Astro, in my opinion. You don't have to like use any of your timed heals. It's all just reactive. When damage goes out, you heal it on White Mage, whereas Astro, you need a lot more planning. There's a lot more complexity involved. And that's kind of the case with Sage versus Scholar as well, but Sage comes out on top in that case, where it's almost less thinking, but it's also doing better. So I'm personally leveling Sage right now. It seems like a very solid pick for a shield healer. Not to say Scholar's doing bad. Again, these DPS differences are pretty minor. Sage is at 11,250 and Scholar's at 10,980. So a bit of a difference, but especially when it comes to the healers. And then White Mage is doing 11 versus Astro's 11,480. So, whoops, bumped the mic there. But, you know, that is a 400 DPS difference on a healer, and that's quite big. So if you like Astro, it's doing really well, but if you don't, White Mage is still perfectly fine. Again, this is all just for fun. It's very likely to change. Astro got announced. Yoshi P put out a announcement very recently saying that jobs are getting changes, likely when the normal raids come out. So very soon, I think Astro was on that list. They're getting a change to Lightspeed that's going to make their burst easier to manage. So we'll see how that impacts things. It might make Astro even better. Astro might be like the go-to pure healer. Especially with some of their cards being able to mitigate and have more utility. It seems like Astro just has more utility than White Mage as well right now. So again, I have not spent a lot of time, if any, on healers for this expansion, so I'm not the one to be asking about this, but pure damage. The other thing you want to look at is healing. You can sort this by healing, but that gets really difficult to look at because you can just sit there and spam heals and get a really high heal per second number. So that kind of skews some of the data if people are over healing. Doesn't really give you a great representation, although it still does seem like Sage is doing very well in terms of healing output. White Mage is doing well also, so we're not looking at that right now. I don't want to screw up all of my different settings I have here at the moment, so you can always come in here and sort by healing and take a look at that, but again, just take it with a grain of salt, knowing that some of those numbers can be misrepresentative based on how much overhealing is being done. It's hard to really nail that down. So we can sort by all jobs as well, and this is just a full graph of all the jobs in the game. We're looking at 90th percentile right now. If we go to maximum percentile, the pure max damage done across the average of both extreme fights at the moment. This is what we're looking at. And it's just crazy to me that Picto is where it is. The healers all make sense. The tanks could use a little bit of adjustment, in my opinion. Gunbreaker is doing a lot of damage right now. I think Dark Knight should be up there with it. And I think Warrior and Paladin should be closer together than they are. Realistically, all the tanks should be doing similar damage at the end of the day. Yeah, the Fizz range seem like they're in a decent spot. There's nothing too noteworthy there. I think Bard doing more than Dancer makes sense because it is, in my opinion, harder to play. But it's not doing so much more. Again, we're looking at maximum here, so don't take this as Machinist is bad. If we sort by, 90th percentile, Machinist jumps up a little bit, looks more on par with Machinist or with Bard Dancer. So the Fizz ranged seem like they're in a good spot. Summoner is in a terrible spot comparatively, in my opinion. There's absolutely no reason to play Summoner anymore. Unless you are just in love with Summoner. But it's kind of a detriment to bring one at this point, when you could have more reses and more damage with Red Mage, or you could just have, what's that damage difference? 2,000 versus 22,300 on Picto. So that kind of speaks for itself. So I think casters are in the worst spot of anything at the moment. The most discrepancy. And then melee, Ninja could use a little bit of a boost. And that's about it for the melee. I think the melee are in a good spot. Otherwise, I don't know why Reaper's doing as much as it is. That would be interesting to find out more on. I think Reaper could probably be below Viper and Samurai, which I believe they might be if we look at maybe the maximums. No, it's still up there. I have no idea what's going on. So is Dragoon. I don't know what's happening here. But, yeah. Again, maximums are not a great statistic because that person could have just critical hit everything and they got super lucky and, you know, boosted the numbers up higher than they should. But if we look at like 95th percentile, Samurai's still doing the most of the melees. Reaper's right there, or Viper's right there. But it seems like Samurai, Reaper, Viper are all in a super good spot. Monk, Dragoon, Ninja hanging out slightly below, not doing horrible, but also not the first pick for super hardcore groups. But yeah, that's pretty much all the jobs. Hopefully this was interesting to you. This was very fun for me. Super easy video to make, just looking at some of this data. I've yet to get my hands on all these jobs. I've been going through MSQ, taking my time this first week. And I'm really looking forward to doing the extreme trials this weekend. Again, I'm planning on doing that on stream. The link to my Twitch channel is down below in the description of this video if you want to come by, hang out while I struggle in both extreme fights. I don't think I'm going to be doing well enough on Dragoon to shift these numbers at all, unfortunately, but who knows? Hopefully this video helped you out understand how to look at some of this data as well. So in the future, you can always find out this type of stuff on your own. Whenever these job changes come out a few days later, after people get a chance to run some fights, you'll be able to come in here and see how those changes have actually affected the standings. And yeah, this is just always really interesting to me, especially so early into an expansion. You'll always have some stuff that's just totally broken. I do not expect Pictomancer to be where it is, so where it is for long, that is. I think this is either getting nerfed or other things are getting buffed, but I could see this being brought down somewhere closer to Black Mage, Red Mage territory. Summoner might need to be brought up closer to Red Mage as well. Because right now Bard's out-damaging Summoner at the 95th percentile. Not at the maximum, but 70th. Bard is out-damaging Summoner and Machinist. So, yeah, I don't know. Things are wacky at the moment, but it's all fairly close. Don't let these small differences dissuade you from playing things casually if you're in a hardcore group or, you know, looking to optimize. Maybe you favor something over something else, but yeah, I don't know. Come in here, poke around. It's fun to see this data. It's fun to see where this stuff's going to lead. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. It was fun taking a look at some of this stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm planning on making individual videos for each of these jobs. I've got 3 of them leveled: Dragoon, Ninja, and Dark Knight. So I'll probably make a video for Dark Knight in the near future. Not Dark Knight, for Dragoon in the near future. Sorry. Doing one take for this video here, and it's I'm going to screw some stuff up. But if you want to see some of these videos on each of the jobs as I level them and learn them, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's going to take me a bit. I want to take them into some actual content before I make those videos. So that's coming in the future. Look out for it. I know I've been away for a bit, just getting through the story of the MSQ, but we're back. We got more videos coming, and look forward to it, I guess. So thank you for watching. Hope you have a good night, evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time you're watching this, and I'll catch you in the next one. hope to see you on the Twitch stream as well. So catch you next time. Have a good one. Peace.